The first round of the second leg of Champions League matches are over. Benfica, Bayern Munich, Chelsea, and Milan all through to the quarterfinals. And look who's back, Albert Vartanian here. In what is only coincidental that we have to cover Spurs getting kicked out of the Champions League. Mikey Singh and myself, Sarah Pararia. But the big story that we have to start with is, guys, PSG out yet again. Second consecutive year getting knocked out in the round of 16. They have gone through what seems like so much money and so many players, but nothing is working. Mikey, what is wrong with PSG?
That's a loaded question.
Well, I mean, this is their season, right? UEFA Champions League is their season. We know Liga, they win it every single year, essentially. So the fact that they haven't been able to make it out of the round of 16 for... Once again, I think it's 5 of the last 7 years they've not made it out of the round of 16. That just goes to show they can't get over this hump with this team, with this crop of players. And it could just be that maybe they're pulling a lot of different players from a lot of different directions. They haven't become a team. I was reading something after on The Athletic that the Bayern players, obviously, they all huddled together and they celebrated. But the PSG players, you had Mbappe and Messi going off to the dressing room right away, right after final whistle. Mbappe was actually standing, and at the Allianz there is a tunnel that raises up out of the ground, so he was standing there waiting for the tunnel to raise up to just walk off the pitch, because obviously he's pissed out of the game. But then there's a collective group of PSG players that are staying on the pitch and going to thank their away support, including like Marquinhos and Sergio Ramos. So it seems like there's not really that clear unity that you have in a team. That could be just an anecdote for sort of what this PSG team is. It's a team of stars that have been put together, but they're not really a team that's collective, and they haven't been tested in enough in Liga that they would prepare them for I think a team like Bayern.
Yeah, and then people are pointing the finger at maybe Neymar not being there, but when you have Messi and Mbappe, there's no excuse, right? I mean, what two guys that can carry the team behind Neymar? You can't get better than that. It's unfortunate, and I'm kind of upset too, because my big bold prediction was that Messi was going to win the World Cup, the Champions League, and everything in between, and then win the Ballon d'Or. He still might do it, who knows, in terms of winning Ballon d'Or, but what a disappointment for PSG. I mean, the Messi thing hasn't really worked out. He's been good. I mean, maybe he doesn't care as much because he won the World Cup. Not saying he didn't care about the game, but being bumped out of the Champions League. It's just unbelievable. If you go back to that transfer window where they brought in Wijnaldum and Donnarumma and Sergio Ramos and Hakimi and Messi, and they haven't even reached...
They're playing FIFA.
They haven't even reached a quarterfinal in the Champions League. That's unbelievable. And that tells you exactly what you need to know about football now is that, yeah, okay, you can have all the money, but that money doesn't turn into trophies.
Yeah. Let's talk about Mbappe, though, for a minute. Absolutely disgraceful yesterday. He was non-existent. And it's so interesting because when he's on, he's one of the best players in the world.
Oh, yeah.
But yesterday could not do a single thing. Now, I think the formation here that Galtier put out was a little questionable as well. The subs were shocking. We spoke about this, Mikey, with James. But, Albert, what do you think about the state of Galtier right now? Because I mean, we know PSG let a coach go like it's nothing.
Right.
Do you expect that this season?
You would think so, based on what's happened before, based on history, right? And you can't really point the finger at, I don't know if you can point the finger at managers anymore. I mean, they're the first to be blamed and they're the first to get to sack, and I'm sure we'll get into Antonio Conte and managers and who should take the blame and blaming players. It's so tough. It really depends on what happens with PSG come the end of the season. Who leaves, who stays. And then I think you make your determination then in terms of who's going to be your manager, because you don't know what players are going to stay there, right? Is Mbappe going to go? Is Neymar going to go? Is Messi going to go? Are all three of them going to go?
Well, Mikey, you brought this up the other day as well, that you said, okay, Mbappe might be going, but what does this mean if they get knocked out of the Champions League? Is Messi gone too? We know there's also rumors about Sergio Ramos going to Al Nassr. This whole team could be picked apart by the time the transfer window comes around.
Well, I'll take it a step further, Sarah. Ownership, too, is a big talking point, because obviously you have the rumors that the Qataris might buy Manchester United. And apparently there's some rules there about them owning two clubs. You can't really do it under the same umbrella in UEFA. So this PSG team, it could really be an end of an era here based on what's going on here. And I think I need to point out Messi. He got his World Cup, which is great. You're never going to doubt that he's probably the greatest player of all time, at least definitely of our generation. He hasn't been to a Champions League final, back at a Champions League final.
2014 with Barcelona.
In 8-9 years.
He had that one in the back pocket.
8-9 years.
Yeah.
Don't you think he would have wanted one more?
I'm sure he does, right? But I mean,
it might not happen.
It might not happen. But I think for him also, he went through that phase when Barcelona were really in their true glory, winning everything. That I think he then shifted his focus to his national side because they hadn't won anything. That's just like what I'm assuming.
Yeah.
But
you see the difference between Mbappe and Messi's like mindset and mentality when they're walking off the pitch. Like Messi's just like, yeah, it happened, whatever. Mbappe's storming off there, pissed because he obviously hasn't gotten to that point yet.
He did that to himself. Let us remind one another with what happened with Real Madrid.
There's clearly issues there. It's hard to fit all those three guys in. But at the same time, while saying that, I mean, they did pretty well in the group stages. They dominated the Champions League, those three.
But they're supposed to.
Yeah, but they still
they're
finished second behind Benfica. So I'm not really sure.
I don't know what the exact answer is. It's hard to know why they're not being as successful as they probably should be.
I think when you have such skilled players on the pitch, and Messi, Neymar, and Mbappe all together, I know Neymar wasn't there yesterday, but you miss something else, a certain ingredient in your team. Because none of those guys are going to be asked to press. None of those guys are going to be asked to defend and track back. None of those guys are going to be asked to be stuck in and tackle. So this happened during the game against Bayern. When you're facing a good team like Bayern, what happens when you lose the ball? How quickly are you able to go win the ball back? You need to surround those guys, if you have players of that quality, with destroyers that can just get them back the ball and let them do their thing. They don't have that at least enough of that at PSG.
Look what Argentina did with Messi, right? They let Messi was able to do what he wanted to do and get into the spaces he wanted to get in because of the players around him. Enzo Fernandez, Rodrigo de Paul, Alex McAllister, players who were there doing
the dirty work.
I know, I'm trying to figure out a different word for it, but doing the dirty work so Messi can go and do his thing.
Exactly.
You're right.
But you multiply that. You multiply that with Mbappe. You multiply that with Neymar.
You do and you don't, though. A lot of the times I actually watch PSG matches in Liga and Messi's playing out of position. And it doesn't make a lot of sense. But that's the thing. I think, honestly, you hit the nail on the head. You cannot just buy a bunch of very talented players and expect them to make a unified team.
There's got to be a system there that makes sense, right?
Yeah, exactly. Credit to Bayern Munich, though. They did what they needed to get done. It wasn't pretty football, but it was pragmatic and it worked. So Bayern on to the next round. Let's shift our focus, though, to Mr. Graham Potter and Chelsea. After going 6 matches without a win, they beat Leeds over the weekend, and then they beat Dortmund. And I think what was a shocking result to all of us, especially you two and James, but Potter ball gets the better of Dortmund. Albert, what did Chelsea do differently here that they haven't been doing in so long? Because to me, it was ugly football. It wasn't great. I mean, the penalty situation was horrendous. But what shifted here? I
don't think much changed based on how Potter set up the team. I think they just finished their chances. That was the biggest thing. And I will say this: Koulibaly, Fofana, and Cucurella as a back three were excellent. I thought Cucurella was man of the match in that game. I was really worried about them because, as you mentioned, I decided to go with Dortmund in a bet, but draw no bet. I was expecting at least
he sold me too.
I know. I sold a lot of people. I sold a lot of people on it. I was expecting at least to draw. Chelsea's a very good team, especially at Stamford Bridge. They just finished their chances, and my biggest concern was no Thiago Silva. But that back three stepped up in a way I did not expect, and it tells you why they bought Fofana and why they bought Koulibaly. I mean, Cucurella, I didn't think he was going to slot into a back three that way, but he looked really good. But yeah, the biggest difference, I think, is that they finished their chances. And look at Kai Havertz again. I mean, say what you want about the guy. He's a big game player. He scored 1 goal. When Chelsea won the Champions League, he scored 1 goal, and it was in the final. When Chelsea won the FIFA Club World Cup, he scored the final goal to win the game in extra time.
There when it counts.
He doesn't score a lot of goals, but he scores goals when it matters. And just one more shout out, I thought Raheem Sterling played one of his best games in a Chelsea shirt.
No kidding. No kidding. Mikey, how important was this match for Potter to win?
I think it might save his job. I really do. I think this could be a job-saving performance. Listen, you advance into the final 8 of the Champions League, and you look at the other teams around you so far, at least aside from Bayern, you're like, okay, I wouldn't mind facing a Milan, or even I know they've done really, really well, Benfica. Like, Chelsea should be able to go toe-to-toe at least with all of those teams. So if they go on a run here, let's say they make semifinals of the Champions League, I don't care what happens in the Premier League. I think that's good enough for Graham Potter to at least get a little bit longer of a leash to work in his system and get players acclimated heading into next season. So I think this performance might have actually just saved his job.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see how they continue on doing in the Premier League. Albert, I'm not so sorry to have to do this to you.
That's fine.
Spurs out to Milan in a 0-0 match at home for Spurs. Milan go through on the aggregate from the San Siro 1-0. I mean, Mikey, I feel like you already know what I'm going to say here, but it was just boring and really, I mean, I will say both sides. This match was dull. Both teams looked uninspiring. Milan are lucky, honestly. They had the away win already because they were also looking. Rafael Leao was not great whatsoever. I don't know. So, is it finally the time where we see Harry Kane leaving this season?
I mean, you would think so. Yeah. All signs point towards that. Now there's nothing left to play for, and yeah, Mikey does a little fist pump outside of the top four, which is still, still in their grasp. The top four at the moment. I just don't know what happens. It was a very disappointing result. I mean, I saw the result coming based on the way Spurs have been playing. You lose, 1-0 to Wolves, and before that, you get knocked out of the FA Cup by Sheffield United by fielding a weak team, which really didn't make any sense. And in this game against Milan, you would think that maybe it was Milan who needed the goal, not Spurs, right? And you see the end of the game, Christian Romero gets the red card, whatever. But the substitution that Antonio Conte makes is he takes off Kulusevski and brings on Davinson Sanchez. When you have Danjuma, Lucas Moura, and Sarr on the bench, you need some playmakers out there to try and score a goal, and he makes that decision. And then after the game, he's talking about his contract. My contract expires in June. They might sack me even before the end of the season. Who knows? Maybe they are disappointed. What kind of manager is that? I don't understand. This is, as much as it is the player's fault, this is your fault. This is the team that you put out there. This is the style of play, and this is what happened. You would think he looked at the monitor in the stadium, and he saw Milan, and he went back to his Serie A days, and maybe he thought that they were in the lead.
As a fan, do you want Conte to stay with Spurs?
As a fan and not as a fan, I think it's time to go. If you're coming out after such a disappointing week,
he knows it's time to go
for Tottenham, and you're talking about your contract, and they might sack me early. I have a contract to the end of the season. It's time for you to go. I mean, the Spurs have seen this story since the beginning. He's been talking about this since they lost to Burnley last season. So the same song and dance. It gets old. I think it's time to go. It sounds like there's a report out there that the players and staff want Pochettino to come back in. Is now the right time to do it? I'm not sure. I really don't know. We saw what Conte did last season to push towards the end of the season to finish in the top four. Can he do the same now? I don't think so. I think he's really, truly lost the dressing room.
I think the favorite right now to come in as new Tottenham coach is Jose Enrique. And I personally would love to see that.
I don't know. There's him. There's Tuchel. Who knows? Who knows, man?
But you need someone that's going to understand what Tottenham football is, and that's supposed to be an exciting brand of football. You might not win trophies, you might not finish first every year, but at least fans who show up at what is it now, Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, White Hart Lane, come on. At least fans who show up there will at least appreciate what is being played on the pitch. Right now, you cannot do that whatsoever. They form a horseshoe, and they just pass around the horseshoe until they feel like they can whip it across. You whip it across, and it's a terrible chance, and back goes the other team gets possession, and Tottenham draws back to the 18-yard box and tries to hit teams off the counter.
White Hart Lane, under the lights, European night. I mean, Spurs haven't had a ton of success in the Champions League, but they've made some incredible moments in it. And it just, you didn't feel that yesterday watching that. It was defensive, anti-type of football. They had one chance, and it was a Harry Kane header, which was a great header, great save by the Milan keeper, but it's just not good enough. Like, it really isn't. I think Conte is just as much to blame as the players are.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think it'll be a very interesting offseason for the Spurs, but also concerned about Milan going into the next round. I don't think they'll do well if they play this kind of football. Finally, guys, Benfica cruise past Club Brugge 5-1. Tajon Buchanan, our Canadian teammate over there is knocked out in the round of 16, but kudos to Club Brugge because they had a great run and they played some fantastic.
Parker.
Yeah, they take their manager with them, eh?
Yeah,
Scott Parker.
What a horrible.
What are you going to do? But you know what? They did well in the group stage. Credit to them. But this has to be all about Benfica. Mikey had them as his underdogs going to the final, and I was thinking, how good would a Napoli-Benfica final be?
Sign me up.
I want that. I want that. I don't want to see any of these big teams.
That's the Vartanian Singh derby, man. He had Benfica at Napoli to win it, so we'll see. It's going to be a great, I think.
Wait, why is Napoli-Benfica's why?
Because
we did a prediction show, and I'm like, I like Napoli and Bayern to win.
By the way, this was months ago.
Yeah, months ago.
Give us credit for that.
I went with Napoli, Bayern. You went Benfica. Who's the other team? There's another team we went with. I can't remember now. But anyway, let's say Benfica was the only one.
Bayern, I want to say.
That's so we both went
Bayern.
Yeah.
Okay, I never knew that.
I hope there's a new champion. I want to see someone different.
Yeah, me too. I want Napoli to win everything. I want them to win the City.
It could be the year. It could be the year. A lot of the big dogs.
What a double that'd be.
Yeah,
Scudetto and Champions League.
I love it. I love it. So 4 teams through, 4 teams left. Next week, will we see those matches kick off? Liverpool, Real Madrid. Remember that. All coming next week.